Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take complex source material and, well, distill it down, giving you the key insights you need to be genuinely informed.
And today we're diving into something really fascinating and, frankly, quite urgent. It's this tension, this push and pull between, let's say, the cold logic of data and AI and the incredibly fast, almost primal ability of the human mind to recognize patterns and symbols.
That's right. That's our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at the signs, the symptoms, the things that make us consciously act regarding our health. And we're focusing particularly on some innovative diagnostic approaches like Dr. Maya's color-coded system you brought up.
Yeah, and the sources we're drawing on are really broad. They cover the dangers of AI bias in healthcare, which is a huge topic right now.
Huge.
But also the psychological power of symbols, thinking about Jungian concepts, the unconscious mind, and then there's the massive looming threat of antimicrobial resistance, AMR.
So the core conflict, the central question we're wrestling with is this: how do we make faster, safer, better health decisions? Is it by trusting these rigid, data-driven algorithms?
Or is it by harnessing something more innate, something like the brain's ability to just see patterns, to grasp symbols almost instantly?
And that's the hook, isn't it? This idea that the subconscious mind is like a radar. You feed it information in the right way, maybe as symbols or patterns or colors, like in the Dr. Maya system.
And it helps what's called the reticuloendothelial system just lock onto the problem
But quickly,
accurately.
before we dive deeper, maybe we should just quickly touch on that term, the reticuloendothelial system. It sounds complex.
It does, but think of it simply as the body's main surveillance and defense network. It's made up of specific cells, macrophages, and others spread throughout our tissues. They engulf pathogens, clear out debris.
Okay, so the physical cleanup crew.
Right, but in the context we're discussing how the brain processes information, it relates to that immediate, almost preconscious uptake of raw visual or pattern data. It's that gut feeling, that instant recognition that happens before your logical brain starts analyzing step by step. It's a survival mechanism, really.
That makes sense. So this modern app, with its colors, is intentionally trying to trigger that ancient, fast system.
Exactly, and the sources draw this amazing line connecting this modern tech approach back to, well, ancient ideas. Things like symbols, crystals, plants mentioned in Vedic texts. These healers weren't working with algorithms.
No spreadsheets back then.
No, they were using archetypal recognition, tapping into universal symbolic meanings that the mind just grasps.
So this symbolic pattern-based approach is being positioned as maybe an antidote to the stiffness, the rigidity of algorithms, helping us tell the difference between, real danger and just anxiety, imaginary fear.
Precisely. It's about helping the conscious mind make that crucial differentiation faster. And ultimately, it's about empowering you, the user, towards informed self-care, protecting your well-being, what some sources might even call protecting the soul from illness and the anxiety that comes with it.
Okay, let's really get into this digital dilemma.
Yeah.
Because, for years we've heard the narrative, AI is the future, objective, error-free healthcare.
Right. The promise was huge. But the sources we're looking at really challenge that narrative. They paint a picture where over-reliance on these algorithms could actually be, well, quite dangerous.
Dangerous how? What's the core problem?
Rigidity. It boils down to rigidity. The argument is, because AI is built by humans, following specific instructions, it ends up imposing these very strict rules on how decisions get made.
Like a very narrow pathway.
Exactly. And sticking strictly to that pathway, that protocol, can cause delays. It can lead to wrong information being surfaced or crucial information being missed. And ultimately, that can result in bad health decisions. It kind of constrains the human element it was supposed to help.
So it puts the algorithm potentially in conflict with, say, a doctor's own judgment or experience.
That's a key point the sources make. If doctors are forced, maybe by hospital policy or just by relying too heavily on an AI app to follow its recommendations rigidly, they might lose that vital chance to use their own knowledge, their years of experience, to think outside the box, to spot something unusual the AI wasn't programmed for.
And that ability to deviate, to use intuition, is crucial in medicine, isn't it?
Absolutely crucial. So if a doctor feels pressured to stick to the digital pathway, even when their gut feeling or their pattern recognition built over decades says, hang on a minute,
they might override their better judgment.
Yes. And that can lead down the path to a wrong diagnosis, the wrong treatment, maybe even serious complications. The AI is a tool, potentially a powerful one, but when it dictates rather than assists, it can actually limit the intelligence it was meant to enhance.
This really highlights that huge issue of algorithmic bias. The sources call it a major open challenge. It's not just a glitch in the code, is it? It's deeper.
It's much deeper. It's about the data. Algorithmic bias happens when the huge data sets used to train these AI systems don't accurately reflect the real diversity of the human population.
So if the training data mostly comes from, say, one demographic group,
Like young, healthy white men, for instance, which has historically been common in medical research,
Right.
then the AI learns patterns and makes predictions based on that group. It essentially bakes in existing societal biases.
and when it encounters someone different, different age, ethnicity, health status, it struggles.
It can fail badly. It can't generalize properly. So for large parts of the population, the AI might give wrong diagnoses or suggest treatments that aren't optimal or even harmful. It's a failure of the data to represent reality.
Is there a specific example of this?
Yeah, the sources give a really stark one: automated sleep scoring algorithms. Systems designed to analyze sleep studies.
Okay.
In the lab, trained on certain data, they looked great, high accuracy scores, but then when they were rolled out into actual clinics, dealing with real patients, especially older patients,
They didn't perform as well.
they often fail miserably, according to one source.
Wow. Why is such a dramatic drop-off?
Because the initial training data was mostly from young, healthy people. Sleep changes drastically as we age. Sleep disorders look different in older adults. The AI just hadn't learned those patterns because they weren't sufficiently represented in its training.
So it was brilliant at recognizing what it already knew.
Exactly. But faced with the complexity and variability of real-world patients, especially those different from the training set, its rigid learning failed. The human body just isn't as predictable or uniform as the training data often assumes.
That sleep example is quite chilling, actually. It really underlines how careful we need to be about trusting these systems, especially when they move from the lab to the messy reality of clinical practice.
And it's not just the technical failures. There's a huge human and ethical dimension here, too. The British Medical Association's perspective, mentioned in the sources, really focuses on the erosion of trust.
How does AI erode trust?
Well, the argument is that AI simply cannot replace the continuity of care, that relationship built over time between a patient and their doctor or healthcare team.
That human connection.
Precisely. It's built on empathy, communication, shared history. If you insert AI as this kind of impersonal intermediary, this barrier, it can make patients feel alienated, misunderstood, and ultimately distrustful.
And that trust isn't just a nice to have, is it? It's actually part of the healing process, especially in serious situations.
Absolutely vital. Think about someone getting a really tough diagnosis, something life-limiting. Yes, an algorithm might give technically accurate information about prognosis or treatments.
But that's not all they need in that moment.
Not at all. What they often need most is human comfort, reassurance, maybe even hope, delivered by someone they trust, someone who knows them as a person. The sources are quite clear. AI, no matter how sophisticated it gets, can't replicate that. It can't offer that genuine human connection, that vulnerability that builds real trust.
That vulnerability point connects to another interesting finding in the sources about how we're persuaded, how trust is built in general.
Yes, it touches on communication strategy. The research suggests that when you're trying to build trust, especially if you're trying to bridge divides or talk about sensitive topics like health, personal stories, appealing to emotion, pathos,
They work better than just presenting data. Logos.
significantly better. The human brain seems wired to connect with narratives. We relate to stories.
So if someone shares a personal health struggle, we find them more trustworthy than someone just listing statistics or facts.
That's what the studies indicate. Sharing something personal signals vulnerability, authenticity. It creates a bond. Algorithms can't do that. They can't generate genuine vulnerability or share real lived experience.
That's a powerful defense of keeping the human element central in medicine, isn't it?
Mhm.
Our ability to connect through shared experience is something AI just can't simulate effectively. Okay, so we've talked about the risks, the rigidity, the bias of relying too heavily on current AI. Let's pivot now to the need for something different, for self-empowerment, and this specific approach, Dr. Maya's intuitive response system. But first, why is self-diagnosis, or at least better self-assessment, so critical right now?
The urgency is immense, and it's largely driven by a crisis that's maybe less visible day to day than AI, but potentially far more devastating. Antimicrobial resistance, AMR.
Right, antibiotic resistance. We hear about it, but maybe don't grasp the scale.
The scale is terrifying. The sources state that over 70% of bacteria are already resistant to at least one common antibiotic we rely on. 70%.
That's staggering.
It is, and the projections, they suggest that by 2050, infections from these resistant bugs could kill over 10 million people every year.
10 million.
To put that in context, the sources point out that this projection makes AMR potentially 20 times more lethal than the COVID-19 pandemic was at its peak. We're literally running out of effective weapons against common infections.
And every time we use an antibiotic unnecessarily or incorrectly,
we fuel the fire, we accelerate the development of more resistance.
and clinical settings like hospitals or clinics are actually hotspots for this.
They are major breeding grounds, unfortunately. Due to the concentration of sick people and antibiotic use, resistant strains can spread easily through cross-infection.
So helping people figure out if they really need to go to the doctor, if they really need antibiotics, becomes a public health imperative.
Absolutely. If people can accurately identify common self-limiting ailments themselves and know when not to seek antibiotics or when not to rush to a clinic, it reduces the pressure. It saves resources, cuts healthcare costs, and crucially lowers everyone's exposure risk to those dangerous resistant bacteria.
Okay, so if that's the why, let's look at the how. How does this Dr. Maya system claim to offer accurate, rapid self-assessment without just becoming another confusing WebMD-style symptom checker?
It takes a fundamentally different approach. Most health apps, they lead you down these endless decision trees, question after question. Do you have a fever? Is it high? Is there a rash? It can be really anxiety-provoking.
Right, you end up convincing yourself you have 5 different rare diseases.
Exactly. Dr. Maya's system works differently. It empowers you to combine just 3 key symptoms, which are color-coded for severity or type.
Only 3. That sounds almost too simple. How can 3 things capture the complexity?
Well, that's where the pattern recognition comes in. The claim is that this mimics how an experienced doctor actually thinks. They don't necessarily run through a 50-item checklist in their head initially.
What do they do?
They often spot a pattern in a few key presenting signs. Maybe it's the type of pain, its location, and one other associated symptom. That combination points them towards the likely involved organ or the type of problem. They form a quick hypothesis based on that pattern.
Ah, I see. So the 3 color-coded symptoms are designed to create a distinct visual pattern for the user's brain to process quickly.
Precisely. It bypasses that slow, linear questioning and taps into that faster reticuloendothelial system response we talked about. The colors and the combination act as a symbolic shortcut.
And this visual, pattern-based approach is supposed to be less anxiety-inducing.
That's a key benefit highlighted. It provides a structured way to assess things. It's visual, it's consistent. Instead of floundering in uncertainty, you're given a clear pattern to consider. That structure itself can help reduce anxiety. And it's educational, too, teaching you to recognize significant combinations.
There's a specific story in the sources that illustrates this, working in a really critical situation, right?
Yes, a powerful anecdote. The author, who is actually a doctor themselves, experienced some very strange symptoms. Profuse sweating, but also these excruciating cramps just in the left arm. Importantly, without the classic chest pain often associated with a heart attack.
So even as a doctor, they might not have immediately thought heart attack?
Possibly not. The symptoms were atypical, maybe muscular, maybe something else, but they used the Dr. Maya app, inputting these 3 key features: the sweating, the arm cramps, the severity.
And what did the system show?
It flagged that specific combination as multiple red flags, high alert, even though their initial ECG test in the hospital came back normal.
Which could have been falsely reassuring.
Very much so. But the urgency conveyed by the app's pattern recognition, that specific trio of red flags, made the author insist on more tests, push past the initial normal result.
And the outcome?
The further test confirmed an acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack. The system's ability to recognize a dangerous pattern, even with atypical symptoms, led to life-saving intervention. It went beyond a simple symptom checklist.
That really drives home the difference between just collecting data points and recognizing a meaningful pattern. It's the combination, the relationship between the symptoms, that holds the diagnostic key.
And this brings us neatly into the psychology of it all. Why are symbols and patterns so powerful? Why does the brain seem to process them faster, more effectively than just words on a page, especially when we're stressed or scared?
It comes down to how our brains are wired, fundamentally, doesn't it?
It really does. Cognitive science research is pretty clear on this. Symbols stick in our memory better than words. They give us a visual handle, an anchor for complex or abstract ideas. Think about it: road signs, logos,
Instantly recognizable.
instant meaning. You process the symbol long before you'd read and consciously interpret a sentence explaining the same thing. Memory tests consistently show symbols outperforming words.
So when you present symptoms using colors, or as part of a visual pattern, you're basically speaking the brain's preferred, faster language, engaging that rapid radar, the reticuloendothelial system, directly.
That's the idea. You bypass the slower, analytical language processing parts and go straight for that quick, intuitive identification. And in a potential health emergency, that speed is obviously critical.
This is where the connection to Jungian psychology becomes really interesting. The sources make a distinction between signs and symbols. How do they differ?
It's a crucial difference in Jung's view. A sign is pretty straightforward. It points to something known, something definite, like a stop sign means stop.
Got it.
A symbol, on the other hand, represents something more, something partly unknown, maybe even unconscious. It hints at a deeper meaning beyond the obvious. Symbols tend to bubble up spontaneously, often from the unconscious mind. Think about dreams.
Dreams are symbolic because they're trying to communicate something we haven't fully grasped consciously.
Exactly. They're the unconscious trying to bridge the gap to the conscious mind using a language of images and archetypes.
Okay, archetypes. It's another key Jungian term the sources mention. How do archetypes relate to, say, a color-coded medical app?
Archetypes are like universal, inherited blueprints for understanding the world and ourselves. They're not specific images, but underlying patterns of thought and experience. Jung talked about key ones like the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, the anima or animus, the unconscious feminine or masculine aspects within us, and the self, the archetype of wholeness, of integration, often symbolized by things like a circle, a mandala, or even a simple stone.
And this idea of wholeness is important.
Very. Jung believed our psychological health depends on integrating these different archetypal aspects. How these symbols arrange themselves in our psyche shapes our emotions, our reactions. So, when a system like Dr. Maya presents information as a clear, defined pattern,
Like the color combinations.
it resonates because our minds are inherently seeking patterns, seeking that sense of order and wholeness. It feels intuitively right or wrong based on these deep structures.
And these archetypes, these patterns, could be forces for good or bad.
Absolutely. When we engage with them consciously, they can be incredibly creative, leading to insight and growth. But, as Jung warned, if these patterns become rigid, if they stiffen into conscious prejudices,
Like fixed beliefs or maybe even rigid algorithms.
precisely, then they block further discovery. They become destructive. That's why a symbolic approach can be powerful. It can sometimes bypass those rigid conscious filters and speak directly to that deeper pattern recognition ability.
Which links back to managing fear, right? Because uncertainty fuels fear, especially health anxiety.
Exactly right. The whole goal of Jung's process of individuation, integrating the conscious and unconscious, is to become more whole, more centered, calmer. In a health crisis, fear can be overwhelming.
So a clear pattern helps cut through the noise.
It helps the conscious mind distinguish. Is this real fear based on a genuine, identifiable threat pattern like the heart attack symptoms? Or is it imaginary fear, that free-floating anxiety that comes from not knowing what's wrong?
Giving structure reduces the mental and emotional burden of ambiguity.
It grounds you. And when the mind is less consumed by that diffuse anxiety, the body responds. You can think more clearly, make better decisions. The sources suggest this clarity helps the body regulate emotions and protects our core sense of self, the soul, from being overwhelmed by the illusion, the maya, of panic and uncertainty. It lets that intuitive judgment, which Jung thought could be incredibly accurate under the right conditions, come through.
So we have this powerful tool for initial assessment for pattern recognition. But the sources emphasize this isn't the whole picture. Diagnosis is just the start. We need to think about holistic health.
Absolutely. The patient is more than just a set of symptoms that match a pattern. That's why, especially for people with complex or multiple physical symptoms, what doctors sometimes call somatic symptoms.
Things that don't easily fit one diagnosis.
Exactly. The recommended best practice is what are called a biopsychosocial approach.
Biopsychosocial. What does that mean in practice?
It means looking at the whole person. You assess the biological, the physical symptoms, test results, but you also actively explore the psychological, their mood, stress levels, past trauma, and the social, their relationships, work situation, support network.
So you're treating the person, not just the disease.
Precisely. You can't understand the persistent headache without understanding the immense stress from their job or the impact of recent grief. Patients feel heard, feel seen when you take this broader view. It strengthens that crucial therapeutic relationship.
And we're understanding more and more scientifically how connected the psychosocial is to the lyo, especially via the gut microbiome, aren't we?
The connection is incredibly strong and increasingly well documented. We know chronic stress, for example, really messes with the gut.
How so?
High levels of stress hormones like cortisol can disrupt the balance of bacteria in your gut. This imbalance is called dysbiosis, and the gut and brain are constantly talking to each other.
The gut-brain axis.
Right. Through nerves, hormones, and importantly, chemicals produced by the gut bacteria themselves, these metabolites.
Like short-chain fatty acids.
Yes, things like butyrate. These can influence inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain, neuroinflammation. So dysbiosis in the gut is now strongly linked to things like depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. Your psychological state is literally impacting your gut microbes, and your gut microbes are impacting your brain function.
It's a powerful feedback loop,
Yeah.
which really underlines why just treating the physical symptom often isn't enough.
You have to address the whole system. And this brings in another fascinating element the sources touch on, the power of belief, the placebo effect.
Ah, yes, the placebo effect. Often dismissed in traditional Western medicine or seen as a problem in clinical trials.
Right, something to be controlled for. But the sources argue it's a very real, very powerful phenomenon we should actually try to harness.
How is it real? What's happening?
It's not just in the mind in a dismissive sense. The belief in a treatment or the belief in the possibility of getting better can trigger real physiological changes in the body. The brain can release its own natural painkillers, modulate immune responses. It's tapping into the body's innate healing capacity.
So a doctor's attitude, their positivity, can actually influence the patient's outcome.
Absolutely. By building rapport, expressing confidence in the treatment, emphasizing the likelihood of recovery, you're essentially activating the patient's internal pharmacy. It's a legitimate part of the therapeutic process.
That's empowering for the listener, too, knowing that your own mindset, your belief, plays an active role.
Definitely. And supporting that innate healing capacity involves actionable lifestyle choices. The courses highlight managing stress, things like deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness, really can lower cortisol. Getting enough quality sleep is fundamental.
And diet, of course, linking back to the microbiome.
Crucial. Eating foods that support a diverse gut microbiome. Things like fermented foods for probiotics, fiber-rich foods for prebiotics, ensuring enough protein and healthy fats. All of this supports not just gut health, but immune function and mental well-being too.
So it seems all these threads, the limits of AI, the need for faster assessment like Dr. Maya, the importance of holistic care, understanding the mind-body connection, they all point towards one central theme.
Self-advocacy. Empowerment. That seems to be the core vision behind systems like Dr. Maya. It's about educating people, giving them tools and knowledge so they can take more control over their own health journey.
Which includes feeling confident enough to ask questions.
Yes. Knowing how to ask the right questions of your doctor, understanding your own results, feeling empowered to seek a second opinion if your intuition, maybe guided by a pattern you've recognized, tells you something isn't quite right.
But just to be absolutely clear, the sources aren't saying replace your doctor with an app.
Not at all. It's stated very explicitly. Self-diagnosis tools are not a substitute for professional medical advice and care. They are tools for informed participation.
Informed participation. I like that phrasing.
It's about shifting from being a passive recipient of healthcare to an active, educated partner in your own well-being, collaborating with your doctor, bringing your own insights and the tool's insights to the table.
So reflecting on our deep dive today, we've journeyed from the rigid constraints of data-driven algorithms,
With all their potential biases and the risk of eroding that essential human trust.
all the way to the speed and intuitive power of the subconscious mind's grasp of symbols and patterns, like those used in the color-coded system.
And we saw how that pattern recognition can be incredibly fast, potentially anxiety-reducing, leveraging that reticuloendothelial system for quick identification in a way that linear data analysis struggles to match.
And underpinning all this is the urgent context of antimicrobial resistance, making smarter self-assessment and reduced reliance on unnecessary clinical visits a vital public health goal. Empowerment through self-awareness, through knowing when and how to act, seems critical.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. It really tries to tie together these threads of psychology, technology, and intuition.
Okay, let's hear it.
We know from Jung that dreams use symbols to communicate things beyond our immediate conscious grasp. A dream interprets itself through its symbolic language. We also know that intuitive judgment, that gut feeling, can be incredibly accurate and fast when it's presented with clear, symbolic patterns.
Right.
Now, consider that current AI systems, built on human data, inherit human biases and often enforce a kind of rigid, logical certainty, the logos. This can make them slow to adapt, potentially untrustworthy for diverse populations.
So the provocative question is,
Should the next evolution of medical AI focus less on refining logical calculation, on achieving perfect statistical certainty, and more on learning to communicate risk, possibility, and diagnosis through the language the human subconscious understands best? Universal, maybe even therapeutic, symbols and visual patterns.
wow. So build AI that speaks in symbols, not just statistics, leveraging our innate lightning-fast pattern recognition instead of trying to force our brains down rigid logical pathways.
Would that be the key? Developing systems that present information in a way that triggers our fastest, most intuitive judgments rather than just giving us more data to analyze. Perhaps the future of diagnostic speed and trust lies not in more complex algorithms, but in tapping into a more ancient symbolic form of communication. Something to think about.